Well, hi there. How you doing, Liam?
All right, all right. We are
Woo!
Susan. How are you? The interwebs is somewhat finicky,
Uh-oh, we're having
but
interwebs
I
trouble.
think we're okay.
But Liam, are your
How
CPUs
are you?
okay? I know how you love to talk about your CPUs.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Test.
Yeah, I gotcha. You got me
I
okay?
love to talk about my CPU. Got me? Okay.
Well, you're coming in and out. You're
All
like,
right. Yeah, it's
you're a
like
little staticky.
I don't know what's happening.
All right. Well, internet
How about now?
gods.
Am I staticky?
Actually, so
Better?
far, no, actually, that sounds terrific. Yeah. So I don't know about you, but where I am, we're having the perfect kind of weather, the sort of low 70s, clear blue sky, no humidity that I live for. So it shouldn't be a brownout situation. But I do know, is it France and United Kingdom are having a hellish heat wave, apparently?
Yeah, they're going. Yeah, heat wave, chaleur, oh là là, la chaleur, c'est très chaud, oh là là.
Exactly.
They're
What
all
you
so
just
super duper. Um, yes, they're all super duper into their global warming storytelling. So they just can't get enough of talking about global warming, the climatiste. Okay,
right.
where's our background? There's our background.
All
All
right.
right, we're good to go.
All
Also, we got
right.
Mega. Yeah, we're slow. We're slow today. The CP.
Right.
I'll stop moving around. Let the CPU do its thing.
All right. Someday you'll have to explain CPUs to me, but no time soon. Rather focus on Maha for the time being. Any idea what they're talking about today, Liam? I know I saw who's coming. I know I saw like a couple, like Russell
CPU.
Brand, of course, and Pierre Corey's going
Yes.
to be here today.
Usually it gets off.
It gets
Yes.
all. You went
I'm
away
gonna
on me
try
again.
to. I'm gonna try to boost up your mic because it's a little bit.
Do you want me to be closer
I'm gonna
to
try to
anything?
boost your mic here. Hope that doesn't
Okay.
break anything.
Let me know if you need me to do anything. But as I was saying, Pierre Corey is coming today, and I'm a big fan of his Ormina water
Oh,
purification system.
really?
Big fan. So here's the thing. In I was talking about it with a friend yesterday. I can't say I notice a whole lot of difference in me. My house plants, Liam. I have plants that I have had for 6 years that have never bloomed. I didn't even know that they were capable of blooming. And within maybe a month or so of starting the plants on the water, they started to bloom. And I wonder if maybe the reason that I don't notice the change in me is that my water was already filtered highly with a reverse osmosis
Really?
filter.
Really?
Yeah, which
That's crazy.
yeah, I know. So his the claim on his product is threefold: that it will purify the water, it will add minerals, which you and I have talked about how vital those are to health for humans and pets and plants. And then the third claim is that it structures the water. And that's like a whole other thing that very few
Hello.
know about. But anyway, so I'm a fan, big fan.
Then 1 second. We've got.
Uh-oh, you're glitching out on me
Let
again,
me.
Liam.
Oh, hold on. All right. There we go. Jeez. All right.
So anyway, we will see what they have to say. So it'll be Dr. Corey. I know I saw Russell Brand. I'm trying to remember who else I
To
saw. Dr.
you
Eric Berg,
or
I saw.
oh, I know. In that thing. Oh, invading your microphone space. How dare it? Let me move it. All right.
Okay. Yep. Move it. I wonder. So Liam, and you might not know the answer to this question, but I wonder whether the Maha meeting will come in glitchy or just Liam from your studio will come in glitchy. We shall find out.
Okay, we're still CUing.
Okay. Again, Liam says
We're
these
still at
things.
100%.
Okay. And that's
So
not
we're
good, right? We
just
want to be lower than
we're
100.
just kind of Yeah. It's just, it's just the intro is
We are starting.
launching.
There's
So let's
double
just
wait. I
look
see
at
ours. Okay.
Maha. We'll
Yeah.
get off of screen. We're starting.
All right.
We'll get off the screen and let it relax. Maybe it's just too intimidated by right now, Susan. So
It's feeling
we'll take
scared. I do know that
ourselves off the
technology
screen
has
and
feelings. Technology
see
often
what
has feelings
happens.
of
All
aggression
right.
towards me in
Maha in the
particular.
house.
There he is.
Yes.
Dr. Lyons. Is he a doctor? I just assumed
Okay.
that, but I don't
There
even
he
know if
is.
he is a doctor. All right.
Today, we're
I
going to
don't
talk
know.
about something that sits underneath every other fight. I'm talking about censorship, and I'm talking about propaganda, the quiet machinery that decides what you're allowed to find and what you're allowed to read, and ultimately what you're allowed to think. Here's the thing. You can win the argument on science. You can have the data, the studies, the real world evidence on your side, and it won't matter one bit. If the Americans don't have to beat you on the ideas, they just have to make sure your ideas never see the light of day. For years, that's exactly what happened to this movement. Bobby Kennedy's The Real Anthony Fauci, arguably the most important book of our generation, sold 1.4 million copies and was, at the same time, probably the most censored book in recent history. When it came out, it wouldn't appear in search results on Amazon or anywhere else. And you had to type in the entire title on the search bar in order to find it. And when you finally located the listing, at the very top, there was a reference to the CDC website, basically telling you that if you wanted to learn real science, you should go to the CDC website. So, this kind of propaganda and the fact that it wasn't available in bookstores or libraries or on most websites, wasn't reviewed in any newspaper, and it was lowered on every bestseller list from the actual sales. So this book was called Misinformation. It was called a dangerous book. So think about that. It's a runaway bestseller. It sells more than 90,000 copies in its first week. But but the American public is told not to read it. And the gatekeepers tried to bury it in every way that they could. So that's not the free marketplace of ideas. That's a rigged system. So let's talk about how this rigging actually works, because most people don't see it. It starts with search. When you type in a question in Google, you probably assume you're getting the best answer, or at least the most relevant one. But you're not. You're getting the answer that someone has decided you should see. So you type in a question about vaccine safety, for example, or about a particular drug, or about an alternative treatment. And what comes up first, time after time, it's the same official sources pushing you. And, they want you to avoid dissenting voices. They don't want you to see independent researchers or doctors asking hard questions. So those questions, those perspectives are buried on page 5 or page 10, or they're scrubbed entirely so that you will not find them. Most people never click past the first few results. And the people who design these systems, they know that. So the ranking becomes the censorship. They don't have to delete anything necessarily. They just have to make sure that you never scroll far enough to find it. Then there's Wikipedia, often the first source that comes up in that same Google search. And a lot of people still treat it like it's a neutral encyclopedia. It's the people's reference, written by everybody, owned by nobody. But that's just the myth. The reality is that on any contested topic, only a small number of anonymous editors control that page. And we know who those people are. They're not working for you. They decide which sources count and which don't. And those sources, the ones they trust, are the very same legacy media outlets that have spent years smearing this movement, while independent voices get dismissed as unreliable or as misinformation. The co-founder of Wikipedia himself, Larry Sanger, has said that the site abandoned its original commitment to neutrality. And we know that it went much further. So try editing the page of anyone in the Maha world, and you see how long your edit will last. Minutes, maybe less. It gets reverted, the page gets locked, and the official narrative snaps right back into place. And here's the part that should keep you up all night. We Americans like to tell ourselves that we live in a free society. After all, we have the First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech. But, everybody, so in old communist countries, censorship was out in the open. Everybody knew that the state ran the newspapers. The state controlled the narrative. So everybody knew that the official story was just the official story, that there were no facts behind it. The lie was obvious, so people developed a kind of immunity to that kind of censorship and propaganda. And they learned to look between the lines, to read between the lines. And they trusted their own intuition over the headlines. They knew they were being lied to, and that knowledge protected them and made them stronger. Here it's been the opposite, and that's what makes it much worse. Here most people, not so much now, but historically, most people genuinely believe that they have free and open access to the truth. They believe Google just shows them what's relevant. They believe Wikipedia is neutral. They believe that the fact checkers are there to protect them. They believe that the New York Times is practicing real journalism. And because they trust the system, they never think to question it. A man who knows he's in a cage can look for a door out, look for a way out. A man who's been convinced he's already free will never even look. So that's the more sophisticated, more dangerous form of control, the kind that doesn't feel like you're being controlled. It's subtle. It's a shadow ban. A controversial post mysteriously reaches almost no one. It's an algorithm that throttles one voice and amplifies another voice. And sometimes it's even quieter than that. A meaningless book, a book with no reason, that no reasonable person would read, like Jill Biden's book, gets listed as a #1 New York Times bestseller. This is a book stacked up everywhere, just prepared to sell, called by the New York Times the book everyone's going to be reading. But at the very same time, Eric Metaxas's patriotic book, Revolution, is mysteriously banned in bookstores all across the country, and that's not mentioned anywhere. Barnes & Noble doesn't carry a single store. 600 privately owned stores do not have a single copy. But the New York Times then, even though it outsells Jill Biden's book by almost 100%, shows up behind Jill Biden's book on the New York Times bestseller list. So our controlled information ecosystem is filled with examples of this kind of thing. And, Martin Luther King said it better than I could ever say it. He said, all we say in America, he said, is be true to what you said on paper. Somewhere I read of freedom of speech, he says. Somewhere I read of freedom of the press. So he was trying to hold this country to his own promise, to the promise that it made to all of us. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're not asking for anything radical. We're asking America to be true to what it says in the Bill of Rights and in the Constitution. So I do want to point to one example where control is not so subtle. On a recent JP Morgan client call with, hundreds, if not thousands of influential and important investors all around the country, they brought up the issue of Secretary Kennedy. They brought him up in this presentation, and what they said was, and what people heard was nothing less than big pharma propaganda, making it even into that. So they said he was anti-science, that he was dangerous, that the system wasn't working, that the system was beautiful before, and that now it's broken. So we know, all of us watching this show, know that he's dangerous to a corrupt system that has prioritized profits over people for a generation, that has failed the American people, and that the reforms that are underway now at HHS are focused on increasing transparency, reevaluating conflicts of interest, demanding higher standards of science, and addressing the chronic disease epidemic that has worsened despite decades of astronomical spending. So none of that is dangerous to Maha moms. None of that is dangerous to anybody watching this show. It's only dangerous to this corrupt system. And so, the good news for us is that, we've been poisoned for a generation. And these companies, they see Bobby Kennedy and they see us as an incredible danger for the people who want to continue poisoning our children and all of us. So, we want ordinary people to be able to make informed decisions with the advice of their doctors about their own health, their own kids, their own lives. So we're not anti anything. We just want real science, not the corporate corrupt kind, and a chance to, explain where Maha stands. So, here's where we are. We're going to keep telling the truth on every channel that will allow us to, that they haven't managed to close, through books, through films, through Substack, through the thousands of influencers that are listening to this call. And those influencers, we know they reach hundreds of millions of Americans every single day. And, precisely because the old gatekeepers, they just can't shut them up and they can't close them down. So every time they censor a voice, this movement gets louder and much more powerful. That's the part they don't understand. Too many people finally know how the system works. And we have a, tremendous lineup today of guests who are part of this fight, who've lived this fight, people who've been slandered, canceled, deplatformed, demonetized, buried in the search rankings and smeared on their own Wikipedia pages, but people who kept telling the truth anyway. So today we'll be joined by U.S. Senator for Kentucky, Rand Paul, and the FDA's Deputy Commissioner for Policy Legislation, Grace Graham, Michael Pack, Director of the Lockdown Dissidents, and then you'll also hear from some of the most censored voices in the Maha movement. Gastroenterologist, film director, and author Dr. Andrew Wakefield, the knowledge doctor, Dr. Eric Berg, COVID vaccine injury treatment specialist, author, and researcher, Dr. Pierre Corey, professor of medicine and specialist in internal medicine and homeopathy, Dr. Michael Frost, and then the CEO of Children's Health Defense, Mary Holland, and finally, our very own Russell Brand. So first up, we have Congresswoman. Andrew Wakefield. And, there's a quick story that I would like to tell you about Dr. Andrew Wakefield. So when I first published his book, this is more than 10 years back, I was reading it carefully before publication. And there's this incredible story in there where at the time when he was being attacked and vilified, they were somehow able to make it a question on the test that every teenager in the UK took that asked them, who is the now discredited doctor who falsely claimed that there could be a link between vaccines and autism? So to graduate school in the UK, you had to know a particular narrative that was a lie, that was a made-up story, that was meant to vilify a doctor. So this is Dr. Andrew Wakefield. I'm thrilled to have you on, and welcome to our show.
Let's get on. Okay, can you hear me? Great, it's
Yes.
Wonderful to be on. Thank you so much. The issue of censorship is very close to my heart. It started for us. My first real experience of this was with Vaxxed being accepted into Tribeca Film Festival, run by Robert De Niro, a great film festival. We were delighted, and then it was cancelled. It was cancelled for obvious reasons. And it was a very dark time. A few weeks later, Robert De Niro went on the Today Show, Good Morning America, and all the others to talk about Tribeca. And the only thing that he would talk about is the cancelled film Vaxxed. And he said we should have played that film. Everybody should be entitled to make up their own minds about this issue. We were wrong to have done it. And the film exploded worldwide, became one of the preeminent documentary films of 2016. And there was an instance where where censorship backfired on them in the biggest way. Now it's assumed a kind of quieter, more subtle, insidious presence in everything we do. But, and this is the last note I'll mention about this, is they're losing. They're losing very, very badly. There is a mass action effect taking place in this country, and it's come about because of the power of counter media, its power of books and of film to communicate important messages to a wide public. And that has been extremely important. The other is COVID. COVID was the biggest mistake they've ever made in public health, absolute catastrophe for them. And the more Tony Fauci and others lie in front of Congress, and that becomes manifestly obvious by disclosures, then it's a disaster for them because it magnifies the problem manyfold. And so now I think when I first got involved in this over 31 years ago, there were a handful of people worldwide prepared to discuss the thorny issue of vaccine safety. And now it's more than half the adult population of the world, I would estimate, in the wake of COVID. So we are winning, and one of the most effective mechanisms that Tony referred to for disseminating the message of this community is through social media, that alternative media that has now assumed a much more important role in the public discourse than mainstream media. I'm here today to talk about a book in particular that's coming out on Friday. And the origin of this book, I was at a conference many years ago, 2010, and a mother who had organized the conference had a single child, severely affected, non-verbal child with autism, and just that one child. And that night she took me out for dinner. And over dinner, she asked me if I would father a child for her. Now, you may think, what an extraordinary thing to bring up on a Maha move. What is heaven's name has that got to do with anything? But what her anxiety, her reasoning was symptomatic of a far greater issue, and that was this. Millions of American parents and parents around the world, the thing that keeps them awake at night is what happens to my child when I become infirm or die, and there is no one to care for them. Often this falls to siblings. If there are no siblings, then that is a huge problem. And at the moment, given the lack of provision for these children, many will die on the streets. And what I've seen in my early years in autism was a spate of suicides and murder-suicides of mothers and their children. It is a massive issue. What this woman wanted was not a night of passion with Andy Wakefield. She wanted to conceive and to have a healthy child who would look after her son when she was no longer there. And this is a major issue globally for parents of affected children. I was so inspired by her courage to ask and her motive, her love as a mother for her child, that I wrote this as a screenplay then, and I put it on the shelf in the belief that it would become relevant later. I then decided, I was persuaded to write a book about it, to get it out there. It's much cheaper to get a book out than it is a movie, with the hope that it inspires a movie to be produced. And so that is what I did. It's called The Bequest, and it's a Western. Why a Western? Because I wanted to take it away from a time when the issue of causation was the contentious one of vaccines or not vaccines, not for any reason other than to focus exclusively on the issue of what happens when I am no longer there. And I put it on the Oregon Trail in 1867, one of the harshest environments imaginable in the world, so that everything is thrown at this mother and her child in order to make their life insufferable, intolerable, and lead where it may. The other thing to mention, given that Tony a month ago brought up this issue of spellers, is that spellers plays into this story in a very big way, and is part of the ultimate solution. I think I've run over time, and so I will stop there.
Thanks, Andy. And
all right, we're coming hot and heavy
We
with
sure
the
are.
vaccines, the baptisms of the big pharma.
Yep. And
ridiculousness
so
being
I agree. Well, I mean, duh, I agree with everything that's been said so far. But Liam, one of the things I sent you in the chat is a link to a post where I talk about that play that I kept encouraging you to see in Chicago. And I would say if there are any directors out there, the play is A, hilarious, but B, it is about vaccine controversy. So part of my thinking when I was sitting there in the theater is, wow, how far have we come to the point of Andy Wakefield that the word, or maybe it was Tony Lyons who said the word is getting out there despite the censorship mechanisms. And it's getting out there to the point that somebody wrote a play which is all about controversy in a school, a private school that is has a sort of a Quaker-led consensus-building decision-making process. And what they do during a measles outbreak, when some of their decision makers are on the we want to be vaccine-free side, and others are on the we want to mandate vaccines. So that's one way, if people watching this are looking to get the word out about what your beliefs are, it's a way to put things on the forefront of people's minds. They might go to the play just to be entertained, which was the goal of the 5 people that I went with. But it does make you think. And I think no matter which side of the camp you're on, it would make you think. So,
what's the name of the play again?
Eureka Day. And it is about a day school called Eureka Day. I believe it's no longer running, and it was running in Chicago for a period of time, but the script is there. And again, that entire theater was roaring with laughter, no matter what side of the camp you were on, because the script is so funny. So great idea for anybody out there who is a director or has access to one. That terrific play.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And they were talking about that movie Vax that I remember Robert De Niro, he was on the Today Show or whatever it was, and he was saying, yeah, Tribeca pulled this film, and he just kept saying, that's what I want to talk about. This is a mistake. We should let people talk about whatever it is they want to talk about. We pulled this film, and then the reverse psychology of that banning of it, right? You know,
there's nothing like banning something to make people say, I got to find out what that's all about. Like, you know, it's like when you're little, you want to hear what the grownups are whispering about. It's clearly more interesting, or they wouldn't be whispering. So,
I've never seen the entire film. I've seen bits and pieces on the internet, but it apparently really attacks the vaccine narrative. All right, here's Russell Brand.
Russell Brand. I'll send the link to the other one, our favorite, Liam, the An Inconvenient Study, so that we can show that afterwards.
Okay, great.
Defense organization, is it called? I'm not sure the full name of that. Children's Health Defense. He was pretty enchanting and lovely gentleman who's, as you remarked, endured a great deal for being honest in a field where truth is supposed to be precisely what they're pursuing. You know, I saw and was watching just before I came on Tulsi Gabbard's part in announcement and revelations around Anthony Fauci, including the documentation of his corruption and deception and his involvement in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, stuff that was, of course, chronicled in a book that you published and that Secretary Kennedy wrote, The Real Anthony Fauci, which when I first read that book, I thought, like you said about Andrew Wakefield, this simply cannot be true. I can't adjust to a reality where Anthony Fauci is kind of a villainous individual whose conduct during the AIDS outbreak and crisis was an indication of how he would ultimately behave or eventually behave in the COVID crisis. And even when I was watching Tulsi Gabbard, who's one of the good guys, ain't she? It's a loss, you know, and I hope that her husband Abraham gets well. Praying for that beautiful fellow. Like that, she's leaving. She's with some significant revelations about a man who, at the height of that pandemic, at least when it reached your country, I can list like, well, when he was, I remember James Corden, who's a fellow Brit and a person I care about. Like he did a sort of like a gala about Anthony Fauci. There was a sort of an elaborate street dance a la Fame where they celebrated Fauci when the vaccine was introduced or when there was some cessation in the lockdown. Thank you, Fauci. Of course, all of us remember Stephen Colbert dressing up as a syringe. Stephen Colbert, who never misses an opportunity to condemn and deride Secretary Kennedy. I remember seeing him, Anthony Fauci, so it was just sort of celebrated and near deified. I remember watching the BBC do a sort of a puff piece that stopped only just short of fellatio in declaring Anthony Fauci's incredible abilities, like asking him about his workout routine. And, before I knew about Dr. Wakefield, I would have, the only information I would have had access to was, well, this guy, he's a quack, he's a crackpot, he's a liar, he's dangerously irresponsible. The degree that they will go to, and when I say they, I mean these sets of institutions that have bureaucratic regulatory arms, that have commercial and corporate entities and institutions as a significant portion of their power, as well as sometimes entire governmental departments that operate not on a national level, but on an international and indeed global level. The level of deception that they're able to create is kind of marvelous, a kind of marvelous sheath. A total veil can be drawn across reality where if you were to read the available information, you would assume that Anthony Fauci was a hero and Andrew Wakefield a corrupt quack and an imbecile and a lunatic. And the reality is entirely the opposite. Of course, there is great precedent for this, where, I see my book is, you're promoting the book that we've done together, actually. If God's self, as he did, comes to earth to show you how to live, to absorb the malfeasance impossible for mere humans to consume, he will be inevitably condemned and derided and betrayed by the very people that ought be most invested in supporting him, revering him, loving and worshipping him. No human being can be compared to Christ, of course, and yet we all bear the image of God. And through his sacrifice, we may all walk with him. What does that mean in practice? It means that if you're willing, as he did, to lay down your life for the people you love and for what you believe in, the cause, the purpose that directs your life, then you are a participant in his grace. And if you are not, then I suppose that's a question that we all have to ask of ourselves and sometimes of one another. What are you really in this for? That's why, if we're able to make even so much as a cent out of this book, Tony, I guess we've got to do something worthwhile with it, because I don't want to participate in this game no more. It's not like I detest and am sickened by the culture, although I am. It's just that I don't want its tendrils on me no more, Tony.
I agree with everything Russell says. My only problem, women have a hair bun. I just can't deal with the
So you're going for the aesthetics of the situation. The man bun.
He makes the effort to, like, in the middle of his talking and rearrange the testicle on the top of his head. Not a big fan, but I really agree. And he talks about the veil of disinformation, but I also think that there is something to be said to the sort of the stupidity of humanity. Like the vaccine, right, is supposed to protect you for something, and so if I take the vaccine and you don't, right, then it doesn't matter because I'm protected. But then the human beings are just so illogical, and like Nietzsche said, just because you kill God doesn't mean that the architecture of faith disappears, it just mutates. So people
Correct.
like hide behind this logic sort of veil when they're just really entranced and ensconced in a belief system, so it's just really
Totally. And, one of the things that struck me at the time, I mean, first, I agree with Russell Brand that the level of cultish admiration and putting Anthony Fauci up on a pedestal like he was God or, pretty darn close was kind of nauseating. And I don't know what that was all about. But also, I'm sorry, like anybody who's been around and remembers the opioid epidemic knows pharma companies are not typically about helping people. They are typically about making money. And if they have to kill a bunch of people in the process, as they did with Vioxx and many other products that have been introduced to market and subsequently pulled after enough people have died, I just don't understand why there was some sort of a collective delusion that in this instance, they really want to help us. And so a product that they make this time around could only be good, even though it was rushed to market and it's only been in existence for, I don't know, a week and a half, but nothing could possibly go wrong because they've got us this time. And I just don't understand that level of naivete or willful ignorance. I really don't.
Yeah, and just like he says, remember Stephen Colbert dressing up like a syringe and
Right.
everybody's celebrating this ridiculousness and people just parroting this, like, you're selfish if you don't take this ridiculous
Right.
clot shot that has killed more and injured more people than every vaccine ever developed in humankind. And so it's just amazing at what point does the veil, created by an institution meet the just ridiculous ineptitude and stupidity of the masses that are so easily
led. And let's go hear what Grace says, but I got more thoughts, Liam, when we get to the end.
All right. Okay.
The medical products that they are taking, when we are seeing more and more of these clinical trials go overseas outside the US, especially to China, early stage in Australia as well. And so he tasked us with day one across the department, what can we do? And so Monday was the start where we rolled out a number of efforts and initiatives to both, while reducing the time and cost, so American patients can get early access to these innovative, exciting treatments. We're still generating the gold standard science and data we need to make these decisions, but to do it in a way where FDA isn't asking unnecessary questions or really focusing on what we need to know, what Americans and their patients and their doctors need to know, so they can move forward with these treatments. What can we do so patients can more easily participate in clinical trials? What, as talking about NIH, if they're working with an academic medical center, what can we do to make sure that data is transparent, collected appropriately, and they're doing what they can to reach out and get the best participation in clinical trials? So they're not spending 8 months to a year after your FDA says, yes, patients should have this in a clinical trial. It shouldn't take 8 months to get the first patient enrolled. And so how do we make sure that HHS and working with all of you, academic medical centers, experts across the spectrum, across the field, you have a good idea that can help patients. We don't want to be in the way. We want to get that good data so doctors and patients can be informed. And we want that data to be collected in the United States. And so that's really what the goal was. The announcement this week released a roadmap. Secretary Kennedy released a roadmap about what we're doing, what we did Monday, what's going to be coming out in the near future. We welcome feedback on all of these initiatives. A number are posted publicly, so you can see what's the type of data. A big component of this and a big priority is moving away from the use of animals in any of this testing. How do we use novel technology? There's a policy FDA released on Monday as well that will help facilitate moving away from animal testing as quickly as we possibly can. And so really encourage you to look at that information on the website. I know some have gone over, so I'm happy to give some time back to you to try to stay on track. But really, again, pleased to join you today. And I know Commissioner DeMontis wanted to be here and encourage you to look at that. And please give us feedback on what more we can do to have the right data that patients, doctors can rely on that's generated here in the United States. We are all ears and look forward to working together on this effort.
Yes, indeed. The medical experimentation of animals. It's
Yep.
so interesting how Big Pharma tortures animals, like with the beagles,
Yep.
Dr. Fossey and the beagles,
Yep.
cutting out the vocal cords so they didn't have to listen to the
Yep.
dog scream.
It's
And
horrifying.
yeah, and then you have the world of clinical nutrition, where they found just through trial and error that what animals needed which minerals and which support, which didn't kill the freaking animal, with the minerals. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and Liam, it's so interesting because I hear people all the time who say RFK and then they just roll it out without even thinking about, oh my God, I hate that guy. I'm seriously dumbfounded. I understand the part where if you believe that vaccines are only ever good and that we're going to have plagues that kill people, that you would perhaps look askance at what he's done. But oh my God, he has stopped torture of animals. He just caught $6.5 billion in Medicare fraud that nobody else prior to him caught because they were asleep at the wheel. He has gotten rid of red dye 40 in lots of foods. He's gotten Nestle to commit to taking out synthetic additives. He's gotten medical schools to agree that they will teach nutrition. I don't understand what is controversial about any of those things. And when Michelle Obama put childhood obesity on everybody's front of their mind, everybody celebrated. So
yeah.
it just escapes me, other than the vaccine thing. And I understand, like, people have lots of feelings, and I would encourage them to do the research. And I would encourage them, if somebody tells them that the safety studies exist that prove they're safe, let's show me. I'm
Let's
open.
show them. Where are they? Come
Right.
on.
Right. Exactly.
Let's see
Dr. Michael Crass, what's he got to say?
What's he got to say?
Peer-reviewed homeopathic studies that have been accepted and published in renowned scientific journals are being retracted for flimsy reasons. A study published under my direction showed that adjunctive homeopathic treatment improves quality of life and prolongs survival in patients with advanced stages of lung cancer. The study was conducted to the highest scientific standards at the Medical University of Vienna and published in 2020 in the journal The Oncologist. This study was attacked, prompting the Austrian Agency for Scientific Integrity to issue a final statement alleging data manipulation and falsification. While the journal confirmed the integrity of the study in 2024, just 1 year later, 5 years after publication, the journal retracted the study for the following reasons. The study was deemed irreproducible because the patients had been treated on an individual basis. Furthermore, I was wrongly accused of having marketed homeopathic remedies. Dr. Menachem Oberbaum from Jerusalem conducted a study in India comparing homeopathic and conventional treatment in newborns ranging in age from birth to 2 years. The results indicate significantly better outcomes in the homeopathy group than in the conventional group, such as a lower incidence of upper respiratory tract infections. The European Journal of Pediatrics recorded over 30,000 downloads. The retraction took place without a counter-statement from the authors, as the study was not compared with a placebo and was not conducted as a double-blind trial. Even though the journal had previously published several studies with a similar design. Based on a new argument from the Committee on Publication Ethics, the article was retracted because the journal had lost confidence in it. In April 2020, the journal PLOS ONE retracted an original research article published in 2015 by Emma Macias Cortes from Mexico. 133 peri- and postmenopausal women with moderate to severe major depression were randomized into 3 groups. Individualized homeopathic treatment plus placebo fluoxetine, fluoxetine plus placebo homeopathic treatment, and the homeopathic group was found to be more effective than the placebo group in alleviating depression. Emma's team addressed all the concerns raised by the current editors of PLOS ONE, concerns which would normally have been addressed in a scientific manner. In 2019, the same journal PLOS ONE redacted an article about stimulation of gene expression by Arnica montana, a homeopathic substance, which was published 3 years earlier by Paolo Bellavite from Verona in Italy. The results presented in the study showed for the first time that the stimulating effect of Arnica montana led to an increase in gene expression even at higher dilutions. Unknown individuals filed a complaint with the editor, who posed several technical questions to Paolo, to which he provided entirely satisfactory answers. However, the article was withdrawn nonetheless on the grounds that concerns were raised regarding the concentration of Arnica montana used in the experiments and regarding whether there is sufficient evidence that biochemically active constituents remain in the diluted solutions used in the experiments. As scientists, our aim is to use our work to help people who are suffering. It is unethical to retract outstanding research findings at university level and to damage our reputation through false claims. Ethical legitimacy in such cases demands a clear separation of roles. Yet, in the current publishing models, the editorial boards act simultaneously as investigators, prosecutors, and judges, leaving the author without a defense advocate. If these elements are missing, there's a risk that redaction will function as a sanction rather than as an evaluative act.
Thanks, Dr. Frost. And, it's...
All right. So we've got a comment from Amanda Whittle. Nestle used Cinomix. I'm not familiar with Cinomix. Amanda, if you're out there, I wonder if you could
look it up, and it looks like Cinomix is a biotechnology company that develops food additives. Company claims to have reverse engineered human taste and aroma receptors. So I guess it's a company as opposed to an actual ingredient.
I got it.
Yeah.
So they used Cinomix as a resource to make the candy more addictive and more available for the brain to just
yeah. So
it.
It says Cinomix's products work by amplifying the intensity of flavors. This is done by expressing taste receptors and measuring receptor signaling in response to additives. And this is consistent with what we know about the entire processed food industry, that it is by design that your brain is going to want more of what's in there, because they know what the human brain likes, and they engineer the taste and the ingredients so that we want more of it. So it says no obligation to report their ingredients to the consumer. Cinomix products fall under the broad category of just artificial flavors. For the same reason, the company's chemicals have not undergone the FDA safety approval. Who knew? I didn't know. Did you know, Liam?
I did not know. So that's an awesome
little tidbit of info there.
Okay, looks like we've got our man, Monsieur Calley.
The book was really inspired over the idea of censorship and propaganda. I mean, I have to be honest, before COVID, I don't think I had any sense of the scope and scale of propaganda and censorship and how rife it is in society. I mean, I used to read the New York Times. I thought it was the paper of record, the arbiter of truth. And now I read it, and I literally, every sentence of every headline article There's propaganda, which is a story or a message that wants you to think or act in a certain way. And we're bombarded with these messages on who to like and who to hate and who's right and who's wrong. And our heads swim if you don't know that they're doing that. And, I've learned so much about it in the book, The War on Ivermectin. I started as I became expert on a topic during a pandemic because I was trying to help people. I was trying to find a medicine that would get us out of this nonsense. And I found that the more and more true things I found about this medicine, the more and more lies I saw in the media. And then when I would try to bring that out, the attacks that came at me for just trying to speak a truth and a truth and a humanitarian truth, the truth that could help people save their lives. And, I think it's important that we remember, right, the censorship and propaganda, right? A lot of censorship is around scandals and fraud and like these criminals who are doing these crimes. But when you censor science, and in particular medicine, people die as a result. This is deadly stuff that they're doing. When they don't want you to know about a potential curative therapy that could help you either with a chronic or an acute disease or life-threatening disease, people die. And I had to see hundreds of thousands, if not millions around the world, die as a result of the censorship of the lethality and toxicity of vaccines and the censorship of early repurposed drug treatments. I mean, it was a humanitarian catastrophe that I think is in the rear view mirror of most of society around the world. They don't know exactly what happened. I think that if they think that everyone died of COVID, no, they died because they were deprived of treatments. And then I have to learn about the forms of censorship that goes on. And for me, one of the most shocking was at the level of the medical journals. I had investigators from around the world who had conducted ivermectin trials who were writing to me saying they could not get any of their studies accepted in anything but like a third or a fourth tier journal. The high impact journals, they would only take manipulated trials which showed that these early treatments didn't work. And I watched that play out in real time. And, just to remind everyone, there are former editors of these major journals. There's Peter Goche, who helped found the Cochrane collaboration, one of the top journals of meta-analyses in the world. He has called the pharmaceutical industry a criminal syndicate. They act like the mob, and they have immense power and tools, and they wield censorship and propaganda like nobody's business, and they do it to a deadly extent. And one of the worst forms of censorship, and I think Tony, you touched on it earlier, but it's this attacking of credibility, the way they went after Andy, the way they went after Bobby. When I look at Bobby's life and everything that he did and what he did with water keepers, right? When he was trying to get mercury out of the water, well, I love that joke, right? When he was trying to get mercury out of the water, they didn't call him anti-fish. And then when he was trying to get the mercury out of the vaccines, they called him anti-vax. They should have called him pro-children. And he has been one of the most maligned figures for 18 years, and he walks tall. He keeps going. He doesn't listen. I have a lot of admiration for the man for the stuff that he got. And I just want to share with you an anecdote because I saw this thing play out in real time, and it was just an odd experience in my life because I knew what was going to happen. But as you guys know, that I got my 3 specialty board certifications revoked. It doesn't mean I can't practice medicine, but those were badges of distinction that I had earned because I've been a highly productive and well-known practitioner across 3 specialties. And those specialty boards accused me and my partner, Paul Marek, of misinformation around early treatments and vaccines. And we got a lawyer. We argued with their accusations. We buried them with all sorts of data to show that their accusations were not only incorrect, but poorly founded. And we went through every step of the process. We did the appeal. We did this. And at the final juncture, I'll just finish here, but the final juncture, Paul and I, we actually were on the same Zoom. He was at my house, and we were before a panel of doctors. And I remember to this day, Paul telling me, so we presented these doctors, the doctors were asking us questions. We answered every single one of them emphatically, data-driven, evidence-based, sound reasoning. And at the end of that call, I remember Paul telling me, he just looks at me, he says, I think we're going to be okay. I think, those doctors, they could tell that we're not misinformation. They could tell that we're experts. They could tell that we've studied this stuff. And I looked at him, I said, Paul, are you kidding me? You think this is about those guys on the screen at that panel? This is a foregone conclusion. They need to take our boards away so that my life is the way it is now. Anytime I try to speak in public, anytime I'm mentioned in a newspaper or anything, it is always preceded by discredited or disgraced or board revoked doctor. They just have to put that tag on you because it's like putting a duct tape over your mouth, because no one listens to what you say because you're discredited. And I think that's one of the harshest ways of doing it. I just wanted to talk about that today. So thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, thanks,
Peter,
Peter.
Corey, bring in the fires. People didn't die
Bring in
from
the fire
COVID.
as
They
well.
died of lack of treatment. Big Pharma acts like a freaking syndicate, a mafia. And Bobby Kennedy, when he was taking mercury out of the water,
One of
he
my
was an
favorite
anti-fish. He was an anti-water. But when he takes mercury out of the vaccines, he's anti-vaccine. That was outstanding.
And I tell people all the time, the term is not anti-vax. That term is A, not accurate, and B, it's intentionally inflammatory and divisive. The term is vax selective, which is when you use your brain, you look at the disease, you look at how prevalent it is, you look at how deadly it is, you look at what is the evidence that the vaccine prevents the disease and for how long, what are the risks of the vaccine itself, and anybody who insists that there are no risks had better think otherwise, because there is no substance, whether it is water, minerals, vitamins, any of those things in excess can kill you. So to think that a vaccine somehow would be in some other category of things that has zero risks is just some sort of a magical thinking that, most 4-year-olds could kind of argue their way out of it.
And Amanda Whittle's bringing the fire. She's talking about HEK239, and she says HEK239 stands for human embryonic kidney 293 cells. It is a laboratory cell created in 1973 from cells obtained from a human embryo and then modified so the cells would continue growing indefinitely in culture. The 293 refers to the experiment number used by researcher Frank Graham, found in food and drinks and jabs. It's genes found in our food. Bro, we gotta give Amanda a hand here.
Well, do we? And
bring in the fire. Wow,
and so
that's great.
and I'm going to guess that Amanda Whittle is the same person that was Amanda Merlin, because the Amanda I know fires out information like that, like nobody's business. So how about Amanda? I think it is.
You think this is a pseudonym for the?
I don't know, or maybe Amanda Whittle is her real name, but I just
we don't know.
The Amanda that I know is like one of those 29-hour-a-day firing stuff out on Substack, and it's all like what she just or this Amanda put out. That it's stuff that's historical, it's accurate. She will include the links. It's mind-blowing. She's big on exposing the dark history of psychiatric. We can't really call it care, but psychiatric quote-unquote treatment of people who have been designated as having a mental illness. She's in the UK. I'm here. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of difference, that a lot of the same kind of murky and nefarious things have happened.
So the question, Amanda, are you incognito? As I guess we're wondering, because we have another Amanda who we talked to who's just as brilliant as you.
Illuminate the illusion, because I think you are. But anyway, whoever she is, all of these Amandas, you're all a force. You're wonderful. Yeah. And I think the more we just keep bringing the information out. And who do we have here? I don't recognize that face.
We've got Michael Pack in the house.
Michael Pack, director. Oh, the Lockdown Dissonance. I like the title.
Tony, the one created equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. As you know, you published the book connected to that film. But now we have this partnership with the Wall Street Journal opinion section, and we want to do a series of shorter films, half-hour films that deal with issues and events from the recent past that have been misunderstood or misreported. And lockdowns are a clear example of that. And these are all free, not behind the Wall Street Journal paywalls. So anyone on this call can go and watch it. They can go to WSJ.com and search for Lockdown Dissidents or their YouTube page, or go to WSJ.com/opinion docs and see all three of the ones we've done, or our website, Palladium Pictures, and find out all of our films. But just to defend and one of the reasons I'm happy to be partnered with Wall Street Journal is I'm trying to tell these stories and reach people who maybe aren't in the Maha movement or don't read conservative press and are undecided, and try to tell them the story so they understand it. Not to advocate a point of view, but tell them what happened, what these dissidents were like, and what their views were. And I have to say, in defense of my partner, the Wall Street Journal opinion section, not the news section, the opinion section, they were way ahead of everybody on this. They published Scott Atlas and Jay Bhattacharya in March of 2020, and they wrote editorials in defense of them throughout COVID. So I think they've actually been ahead of almost everybody else, maybe not the news section always. In any case, this film tells that story. We begin, this is a story probably well known to your people on this call, but we begin with the virus starting in Wuhan in December of 2019, where they locked down the whole city. WHO went there, declared lockdowns a success, an approach that had never been used in pandemics before, locking down entire cities and countries, was implemented around the world. And we focus on the people who were skeptical right away. Jay Bhattacharya in March, he's one of the people we focus on. As you people probably know, he did a study in Santa Clara County that already approved, only a few months into the pandemic, that it disproportionately affected older people. And they recommended focused protection. Let's take care of the old people and let young people go about their business, and especially reopen schools. And that was largely ignored, and they were persecuted, just like the previous two guests on this call were mentioning. They were attacked, they were persecuted. And then, we also focused on Scott Atlas, who was invited by Trump to be on the COVID task force, but he was marginalized and views were forced out. And he tells the story of first meeting with Anthony Fauci. Fauci says to him, the problem is the public isn't afraid enough. We need to make the public more afraid so they'll listen to us. As he said, that is really an unethical way to do public health. And we talk about what happened inside that politically. And then he invited Jay Bhattacharya and others to come to the White House. On the way, they did the Great Barrington Declaration, which was Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, Sunetra Gupta from Oxford, and they recommended focused protection. This was already October, and they were immediately attacked. Francis Collins, head of the NIH at that time, wrote to Anthony Fauci saying we need a devastating takedown of them. And they're fringe epidemiologists, even though they were from Harvard, Stanford, and Oxford. And it was the suppression of science that the previous person mentioned. We gave up a lot of our freedoms during COVID, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. But maybe the worst was the suppression of science. The end of the film, we look at how, through the Twitter files and other things, it came to light the government was actively suppressing Jay and Scott Atlas and others on Facebook and Twitter and social media, suppressing their speech, asking those platforms to deboost them or in some places just to shadow ban them. And, we can't have science if one view of science is suppressed, right or wrong. They turned out to be right, but even if they were wrong. So we try to tell that story as a narrative, as an interesting, fascinating narrative to people who may not have heard about it. And I hope that everyone on this call watches, since it's free, and recommends their friends watch it, and especially friends that don't agree with them. I think we present this in a dispassionate, straightforward manner, and I encourage everyone to watch. It's about 30 minutes.
All right, Susan, you're just too good. Amanda Whittle, yes, no, it's me. Substack Amanda. Hi, Susan and Liam. What's up, Amanda?
Hold on, I'm going to put my crown on because I know Amanda Whittle when I see Amanda Whittle type like this stuff being fired at me in a chat. And I know when she's dug up really obscure stuff, but she knows her stuff and she can like spit out all the verbiage. I know who it is. So
that's why we're the king and queen of Live Ellington Live.
It is true. But I got to tell you, we need a title for Amanda because she is like, I don't know what she is, but she's something in the royal court because she is, again, she's a force. Amanda, you're
force of nature.
So I do want to know, Amanda, like you have so much stuff and like I haven't even read half your stuff. I think it should go in a book form because the world wants to hear. I really do. So I don't know if that's on your radar or not, but I would love to put it on your radar. Once you're sleeping, how's the sleeping going? Amanda was trying some new some new neurofeedback stuff. Neurofeedback? Can't even remember what it was, but was having optimistically like sort of early days, good results, which is wonderful.
But what's always also amazing is how you were able to sense. I guess you and Amanda have spent some time on Substack and conversed, and you got a real good feel for her the way she presents information and the forcefulness and sort of just like coming out of left field. Like I never heard Nestle and Cenomix and
it's the left field things. It's the things you've never heard of, and she just spits it out like, well, yeah, don't you know that? And so the other thing is, when I was feeling lazy one day, I just made a post, but I meant it. It was heartfelt. I try to do these little tips, Mopsy's health tip number, whatever, go change your toothbrush and get a bamboo one, or start exercising, or open your front door and go outside, or whatever. And one day I just put, go read everything she ever wrote. And when you're finished in 6 months, come back. But I meant it, because why am I going to reinvent the wheel and say it all over again? But it's also stuff that everybody should know, especially parents, because they send their kids off to the whoever, the therapist, the psychiatrist, the psychiatric institution, and they think they're doing a good thing. And they're not always aware of how much harm can result, and how many people like Amanda 40, 50 years later are still dealing with the trauma of what happened to them. And that's if they're lucky enough to still be alive. And I'm not making that one up, Liam, and you know it. I'm thinking back to when we did National Adverse Drug Event Awareness Day. And there was a mom on there who told about her 12-year-old daughter that went into a psychiatric facility, was started on an SSRI, I believe it was, without notifying the mom or obtaining the mom's permission. And that lady now has a dead daughter. That daughter died while she was inpatient. So, it's mind-blowing what happens in my field, and that we're all still allowed to practice. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like Peter Corey said, it's like a drug dealing mafia. It's just they're like beyond reproach. Anyways, let's see.
Mary Holland, I want to hear what she's got to say.
Let's get to
Foundational principle for our country, and not every country has a First Amendment. Many countries do have laws that are much more restrictive than here, but we do have, as a First Amendment issue, no abridgment of freedom of speech or of the press. And I also want to make the point that the propaganda and censorship always go together. It's censorship of the truth, it's censorship of the disfavored narrative, and then it's propaganda of whatever is the favored narrative. And I just want to point out a particular example. We were just in Washington, D.C. with Senator Ron Johnson a couple weeks ago, and he's been trying to get out information about a report that he did April 29, the mainstream media has still not picked this up. It's a Senate report, an unmasked report about what happened at the FDA, about how absolutely they knew that their algorithms to pick up safety signals did not work, and they didn't want them fixed. And they told the scientist who kept insisting, your algorithms don't work, they told her to cease and desist. And that, by suppressing that science, that enabled the FDA to say, falsely, oh, we don't know about any safety signals, and to include then the false narrative, oh, these shots are safe and effective. So specifically about Children's Health Defense, we started being censored before COVID, which certainly gives you some ideas about potential premeditation. We started to be severely censored in the summer of 2019. Our Facebook page was deplatformed. We were demonetized. We were thrown off of constant contact. Our Instagram account was deplatformed. But then when the Biden administration came into office, literally within a day, Bobby Kennedy's personal Instagram that had nearly 1 million followers was taken down. And truly, that's when this censorship industrial complex took form. And it was led by a federal agency, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And literally, there were thousands of people working in the federal government and in the social media platforms in particular to censor people like Children's Health Defense, Bobby Kennedy. If Maha had existed at the time, I'm sure they would have censored Maha. Fortunately, Jay Bhattacharya and others were plaintiffs in the lawsuit that the attorney generals of Missouri and Louisiana brought in a case called Missouri v. Biden. It's now been settled. But that was the case about the censorship of dis, and malinformation that the government was very explicit about. Through the disclosures, through the discovery in that case, we saw the email traffic between the White House and these social media platforms, where the White House would say, well, just take it down. We don't care if it's truthful. We know it's truthful. In essence, they said, we know people are going to die with our false propaganda, but you need to take it down. So even though Children's Health Defense is really about protecting children from toxic environmental exposures, like many of the ingredients in vaccines, aluminum, mercury, live viruses, unregulated wireless radiation, pesticides like glyphosate, we could not do our work without challenging the censorship and without challenging the propaganda. And so over the last several years, we have sued Meta Platforms that controls Facebook and Instagram. We sued the Biden administration. We sued the Trusted News Initiative that incorporates the Washington Post, the Associated Press, the BBC. We sued the state of California. We sued the Washington Doctors Medical Board. We've represented people like Dr. Paul Merrick, Meryl Nass, Pierre Corey, who spoke earlier, in protecting them from the medical boards. We've won some, we've lost some, and several cases are still ongoing. But one thing is for absolute certain, we cannot give up the right to free speech. If we do, as you said at the beginning, Tony, it's all over. We cannot have a free society without free speech. We will not have health freedom if we don't have freedom of speech. Thank you.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And Amanda was saying neurofeedback, I think.
Neurofeedback,
go to sleep. And that, yes, definitely, that little book you mentioned needs to be in every parent's library. Amanda, there's a way to use AI, to put everything in AI, and then it stores it and understands what it is, and you can create whatever narrative you like. So please don't hesitate.
And Liam is good at it. So if you're looking for the dude, Liam is the dude. Hence the crown and the title. But seriously, and that book needs to get into the hands, sadly, of younger and younger kids, because kids are started on psychotropic medicines at really young ages these days. And by young, I mean 7, 8, 9 years old, which it gives me such concern, both because of the changes that are happening in the brain, and that, as one of the doctors on a previous Maha meeting said, a young brain is not necessarily a smaller version of an adult brain. It functions differently. So not only are you looking at the physiological changes, like what is it doing to that child's kidneys and liver and, their neurons, their firing, all of that, but what about permanent side effects? What about side effects like sexual dysfunction that might never go away, or tardive dyskinesia, which is when a person has some involuntary muscle movements, so they may not be able to control a permanent twitch. So many scary things that can happen. And I don't think we have data on what happens to you if you are 50 years old, but you've now been on psychotropics for 40 of those years. What's your brain doing at that point? And I don't think it's going to be good. I really don't. I think if we can do RFK's deep prescribing and look at lifestyle stuff, look at getting kids outside, getting them to eat, or eat more nutritious food rather, without the Seno, whatever it was, stuff in it, get them to sleep an adequate amount instead of giving them some stimulant meds to keep them awake when they haven't had adequate sleep, getting them outside, off of screens, interacting with humans, all of that would be super helpful. That's your Tony Lyons. Or I'm sorry, Eric Berg, we're on now.
To pull soda off the food stamp thing, a wave of influencers, dozens of them, just blew up their feeds overnight, outraged, all trying to defend soda. And I'm like, these are like dietitians. These are health gurus defending soda all at the same time within the same 48 hours. I found that very odd. Almost every one of them just happened to mention the same thing, that president loves Diet Coke. I'm like, oh, interesting. This is probably not a grassroots reaction. This is a script. And if you pull the string on it, it comes from a PR firm that has been quietly texting influencers their talking points and offering at the very bare minimum, $1,000 a post. But if you are a larger influencer, you can get 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, even up to 500,000 or more per post. And I'm not kidding. It's like a lot of money involved in this. So they're, and the problem is their posts are not mentioning that they're being paid. So unfortunately, it's like you got to be suspicious of these posts because it all seemed to be attacking at the same time. But here's what people need to understand. This is like the normal now, and online influence is the product. You can buy it by the post. And the overwhelming majority of marketers now run influencing or influencer campaigns. It's a multi-billion-dollar machine. I've had many people reach out to me to pay me tens of thousands of dollars to push certain things. And I'm like, I'm not into that. I do not take any of that. But there's a lot of influencers that do. And it's not a problem, but the problem is you have to disclose it. Okay. So when an industry, corporate giants are threatened, a lot of times they're not going to just run an ad because ads don't work anymore. So they rent influencers that look like your neighbor or your friend or a relative. But the FTC made a rule for this. It's in law. So if you are paid to promote something, you have to say it clearly every single time. It has to say ad, sponsored, that simple. The question is this happening? Well, there's one analysis I looked at, more than 100 million posts, okay, found that 96% of the sponsored content was not properly disclosed. And so take a wild guess at what group was the worst at following the rules. Yes, you guessed it, it was health and wellness influencers, the exact people flooding your feed with all sorts of recommendations for your health. So when you start scrolling through and you see someone pushing something, some agenda, something that seems pretty odd, realize it's probably not their opinion. It could be someone else's opinion. So the FTC now can fine violators more than $50,000 per post. So a wellness company called Teamy got hit with a $15 million judgment for exactly this. They were paying influencers who didn't come clean. So there is a law on this. We just need them to, answer one question. Are you being paid to say that? That's really what this is about, because the real threat to Maha is not about the debate. It's kind of about, it's difficult to tell who's really debating, who's behind it. But the FTC right now is very looking into this, and they're cracking down on this disclosure law. So if you are an influencer watching this, you really, and you want to avoid the $50,000 per post violation, you might want to start following the law. Thank you very much, Tony.
That is great to hear, great to get out there. 50,000.
All right. Well, they're running a little long, and I've got like a hard out. So let's give a round of applause for Maha. There, I'm sure that.
Okay, but I got to say one thing, Liam. And if you're only going to say one thing, make it be this.
Let's get to your. I want to get to your.
Oh, okay. You have time to go through those. I thought you were.
Yeah, we'll go through those real quick, and then I got a break.
You got a boogie. All right. Because one of the things, to start at the end, it is not just influencers. So many people do not know that not only is there no law prohibiting doctors from accepting money from pharmaceutical companies, but they don't have any duty to disclose. So the last thing that I put in the chat to you, Liam, was the Medicare site, Open Payments, where you can look up any physician by name and see how much money they have put in their own personal little pocket over the last 2 years from any company, from Pfizer, from Merck, from Moderna, from AstraZeneca, from whoever. One of the worst offenders was the top I'm going to say 2% of orthopedic doctors had pocketed millions in dollars from the makers of orthopedic devices. But the group that I really wish was acquainted with this information is the parents of infants and toddlers and young children, who most of them are completely and blissfully ignorant of the fact that pediatricians can and do get a bonus, a financial incentive, for every 2-year-old in their practice who is fully vaccinated in compliance with whatever the CDC's current recommendations are. And that bonus,
correct.
when you look at the amount of 2-year-olds in the average pediatric practice, amounts to between $100,000 and $200,000 per pediatrician per year, not just the practice, per pediatrician per year. I believe that there should be a duty to disclose that, because I think an awful lot of parents assume that the doctor has their child's best intentions. But what we know, and there are studies proving it, and I will post it so everybody can see it, is that a $20 lunch from a pharmaceutical rep is enough to alter a physician's prescribing habits. So if a $20 lunch has already been proven in a study that nobody disputes to alter prescribing habits, what does the awareness of a $100,000 or $200,000 bonus every year do? When I, the pediatrician, am in the room with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the parents of little Bobby or whoever, it's got to play a role. And it's just, I cannot believe that there's no, like, why aren't the doctors obligated to say, just so you know, Mrs. Smith, I do actually get like a little chunk of change.
I get a kickback.
Right. And
I get a kickback. Come on.
Right. And people don't know that. And that's why I've made it my job to shout it from the rooftops. So go tell all your friends, just get the word out there. And while you're talking to your friends about that, get them to watch the movie An Inconvenient Study. That is also in one of the links that I sent to you, Liam, because there we go. Okay. So we're on Eureka Day. You can scroll through that one quickly, Liam, because I know you have to go. That is just me talking about the play and how fun it was, but also how the times have changed, that this issue is now coming to the forefront in a way where there would be a hilarious satire comedy play about it. You can get the script if you are a director and you want to bring it to your community to kind of put the issue on people's radar. The script is
interesting.
Yeah, it is hilarious, Liam. We were howling. We were, and mind you, of the girls that, old lady girls that I was with, I'm the only one who feels the way I do. So, they did a fairly good job of being balanced. They did not mock the mom who had a child die post measles or post a vaccine. I can't remember what the vaccine was. And the mom gave such a moving speech where she said, it's that all of us, and she meant the moms who have either lost children to a vaccine, the child died, or the child was permanently and seriously injured. It's like so many of us keep going and we say it to our doctors. And it's as if we keep taking our kids in with broken legs after they've been skiing down a hill. And the doctors keep saying, yeah, but it's just coincidence that your kid happened to break their leg right at the same day that they were skiing down the hill. The skiing down the hill had nothing to do with the broken leg. So I thought the play did a good job of being pretty balanced, not mocking either side, and really did a good job of making the entire audience laugh. So you can see a little bit of the script for free on one of those sites that Liam is showing you. You can purchase the whole script on, I think, the site that we're on now. But great play. You'll have fun with it.
And then
so this one,
offering you.
What jogged me to put that one in was the doctor who talked about homeopathy, and like homeopathy. I didn't dig the study up that looks at the safety of it, but to my knowledge, you can't have an adverse reaction from homeopathy. Unlike an herb, an amino acid, a vitamin, a mineral, or whatever, it's inert substance. It's energetic. So at any rate, but looking at the efficacy, if you go back to that study, Liam, it compares, I'm getting ahead of myself. So a spike of fatal medication errors at the beginning of each month. And what prompted me to pull that was that homeopathy, quibble all you want about efficacy. We'll get to the study.
Is this what you talk? This article you're talking about? Homeopathy and conventional medicine and outcome study.
So that one talks about the efficacy. And if you scroll through, Liam, to the conclusions, maybe a couple paragraphs down, main outcome measure, keep going, go a little bit higher up. So towards the beginning so there you go, there's your results. And it looks like if you hang tough on the results and either you read it or 400. So we have a fairly big sample size. Efficacy
456 patients visits were compared with 281 received homeopathy, 175 received conventional medicine. Response to treatment as measured by the primary outcomes criterion for the patients receiving the oversight was 82%. For conventional medicine was 68%.
So the
improvement in less than
group,
1 day and 1 in 3
is greater. And then the purpose of the previous study that I had Liam show was that safety, I don't even want to hear about it, because prescription medications properly prescribed and properly taken kill an exorbitant number of people in our country. So we know that homeopathy is like leaps and bounds safer. And then that particular study showed that the efficacy was greater. So what's the harm? It's not expensive. It works in children and animals, which is a method that is meant to circumvent the placebo effect. I don't see what the problem is. So that's my take on that.
Outstanding info. Info. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. This is another educational broadcast, and we'll see you next time. Au revoir.
We sure will. All right.